Oh my God. Favorite time. Finally time to eat. Yes.
What's for dinner?
Hey everyone, I'm Chef Z and welcome back to another episode of Chef Z Cooks. And today we are cooking up something truly special. We are making one of my favorites, which are Cuban pastelitos. Now these are Cuban style beef patties that are both sweet and savory. It is so well balanced. Like listen, the combination of the puff pastry, that savory picadillo, and that sweet glaze over top is truly out of this world. Now keep in mind that you can find all of my recipes on my website, chefzcooks.com, and definitely follow me on Instagram and TikTok if you aren't already, because I share so many recipes and so much more. Now without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Cuban pastelitos are honestly one of my favorite things to make for family get-togethers, but especially for the holiday season. Now, whenever you're making Cuban pastelitos, of course you have to make some picadillo or even some carne molida. Now, keep in mind that I have so many different recipes here on my channel on how I make picadillo and carne molida. I honestly change it up every so often. So if you have a picadillo recipe that you know and love, feel free and use that instead. But for the most part, we are using a lean grass-fed beef, and that's because we don't want our relleno, which is our filling, to get too greasy. And then to that, we're going to season it with some kosher salt, black pepper, cumin, and some Dominican Orégano, along with Sazón con Achiote. And then we're going to take a cast iron skillet or a regular skillet, and then to that we're just going to add a tiny bit of oil, because again, we don't want our filling to get too greasy. And then we're actually going to start browning the meat. Now this is honestly one of my favorite parts about the whole entire recipe, because it's where I get to really put in a little bit of elbow grease. So I have my meat masher, and if you're interested in the one that I'm using, I'll link it down below. But essentially, while the meat is browning, you just want to go in and mash it up into small little pieces. And now we're going to add our freshly diced onions and peppers along with garlic. Now, don't worry if you feel like you've added too many fresh veggies, because we're actually going to stew this. So those onions and peppers are honestly going to cook down to practically nothing. We're going to add water, and as you guys know, I do not like chewy picadillo, so I do like to stew it for about 20 to 25 minutes. And here's where you also want to add either your bay leaf or even your cilantro. Now we are going to be adding some tomato paste. Now the trick to making any kind of filling for empanadas, or in this case the pastelitos, is that you want to make sure that the filling and the sauce is nice and thick. So we're actually going to cook this down until the tomato paste is nice and thick. And I've actually added a little bit of vino seco, but you can also add some vinegar instead. So once the meat is done, we're going to set that off to the side. And now we're actually going to be making a simple syrup, because at the very end, we're actually going to glaze our pastelitos. And that's truly what takes these Cuban pastelitos to the next level. And making simple syrup is really easy. It is equal parts sugar and water. So you can make about a half a cup of simple syrup, and it's actually going to go a really long way. Now the pastelitos do have an egg wash, and I just like to make this and have it sitting off to the side. So I take one egg, just a tiny bit of water, probably like a tablespoon and a half, and then we're going to whisk it together, and we're going to set that off to the side. And the egg wash is really going to have a key role, which I'll explain later on. So now we're going to take our store-bought puff pastry, and using the store-bought stuff is honestly the easiest way to do this. Now you want to make sure to follow the directions on the packaging, and you actually want to thaw it out, and how long honestly depends on the kind that you have. So once it is completely thawed out, I just like to roll it ever so gently, because I want to stretch it out just a little bit, because hear me out, I am trying to get as many pastelitos as I can out of each sheet. So depending on the size biscuit cutter or cookie cutter that you're using, that can be anywhere between 6 to 9 different pastelitos, but you definitely always want to make sure that you more or less cut about an even amount. and keep track of it, because remember, each of the packages does come with 2 different sheets. Now I will link the cookie cutters that I'm using down below, and I'm using one that's about 3 1/4 inches. But listen to me, you can make these pastelitos as big or as small as you like. And like I mentioned before, I try to get as many as I can, because that means that I can enjoy so many more pastelitos and feed so many more people. Now throughout this process, you also just want to make sure that you are dusting off any excess flour. So once we've cut out all of the pastelito pieces from the puff pastry, we're now going to start assembling everything. So we're going to take the egg wash, and just a tiny bit, we're just going to brush it. And this is why the egg wash is so important, is because it actually helps keep your pastelito nice and sealed. So now for my favorite part, we're going to add the filling, and you want to be super generous when it comes to the filling. And I actually like to pack it in there and like just smush it down a little bit, because it actually allows me to fully fill in the pastelito. So that means I get a nice healthy bite each and every single time. Then I put the top layer on, and then I crimp it down with a fork. And this is totally optional. For me, this is just like a secured method to making sure that they don't burst in the oven when I cook them later on. So you definitely just want to repeat all the steps until you've made all of your pastelitos. Now I will say that you can definitely make these ahead of time and freeze them. If you freeze them, just make sure that you thaw them out completely before you actually cook them. That's actually really important. But thaw them out in the refrigerator, because puff pastry actually cooks better when you're cooking it straight from the refrigerator into the oven, because it actually allows them to puff up really nicely. So as you see here, I have assembled all of the pastelitos. Now keep in mind that these 2 sheets do make more than what you're seeing here on screen, so don't get too scared. So at the very end, I just take a sharp knife and I make 2 slits, and this is going to allow for the air to release a little bit and for pressure not to build up too much where they explode in the oven. We're then going to take that same egg wash and we're just going to brush it over top. You don't want to add too much, because at the end of the day, we don't want any scrambled eggs on top of our pastelitos. And what this egg wash is going to do is that it's going to make them cook nice and golden. And speaking about cooking, we're going to cook it at 425 degrees for about 20 to 22 minutes until they're nice and golden brown, just like you see right here. Now while they're still hot, you're going to take that simple syrup that we've made earlier, and we're going to brush it over top. And be really generous, okay? I'm talking about brushing it over the top, over the sides. Guys, this is what makes the pastelitos, in my opinion, because you're going to get that mix of sweet and savory. And you can definitely pair this with any sauce, whether it's some mojo, some ketchup, a hot sauce, or you can just eat them just like that. For more details on the recipe, be sure to visit my website, chefzcooks.com. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video. Now keep in mind, I have so many more yummy recipes here on my channel, so be sure to subscribe and click that bell so that you're notified each and every single week when I post an all-new video. And if you need some inspiration on what to cook next, go ahead and click right here.